From your heart?
All of that 70 million group of young people who will come out and vote. I believe in you. I think you can turn our nation around. You can make it live up to what it's supposed to do. It's not just that you're the future. You're actually the present. You're actually what we're supposed to be at this moment. And the fact that you have a voice, the fact that you can have a say, you vote for whoever you want for, vote for what you believe in. But I believe that the majority of you can see what's actually happening and you want things to change. So I say all that to say, thank you in advance for your input and the victory that is to come.
Tylko ty nas możesz uratować.
Solo tú puedes salvarnos.
تنها شما ما را نجات داده میتانید.
Only you can save us.
Greetings and salutations, everyone. I'm your moderator for the evening, James Miles. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the Executive Director of Arts Corps in Seattle, Washington. We use arts and arts education to work towards a better life for the youth in our region, country, and the world. As all of us are living in high anxiety with a global pandemic, racial, social inequities, economic downturn, wildfires, smoke, and an impending election, the impact on our future is top of our minds, especially as the youth we serve make up that future. This panel will focus on voting, specifically voting within BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous, people of color, ensuring we have the access to vote and that our vote matters. But let's start with a history lesson. This country that we call the USA was founded in 1776 with a declaration that all men were created equal. I'm zooming in from the unceded territory of the coastal Salish, which is a land where my family and I get to live, work, and play. Yet it's apparent that when the men, women, and two-spirited of these tribes were not included in that original Declaration of Equality, white women who have enjoyed a level of privilege based on their skin color were still unable to vote and were castigated by society and made to be subservient to the white patriarchy that built this country. In 1865, enslaved Africans were freed from their chains legally, but not in practice. Laws and policies were developed to keep people of color, particularly those formerly enslaved, from owning land, obtaining generational wealth, providing adequate lives for their families, and from voting. In 1920, white women were given the right to vote during the suffrage movement. The rights of women of color tossed to the side, though they helped within that movement. With the immigration boom of the late 1800s, we saw more and more cultures and races coming to this beautiful land. When the Chinese came, they were mocked and demoralized by our country, forced to work in industries like railroads and laundry with very little upward mobility. They couldn't vote until 1943. 5 years later, in 1948, people of the First Nations, the peoples whose land we're on now, were provided the right to vote in every state. Let that sink in. We, I say we because I call myself an American, took their land and then didn't allow them to vote for the leader of said land for over a century. In 1965, just 55 years ago, Black people could vote. Some would argue that that year was the year we finally became the land of the free. That may be a conversation for another panel, though. So 2020 marks 100 years of white women's suffrage. 2020 also marks 50th anniversary of Earth Day, the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and of course, 55 years of universal suffrage. We're headed towards an election to vote for our 46th president, where the sitting president would prefer to roll back some of those accomplishments. Not only will this ballot in November 2020 determine the next, hopefully new president, but also inform who will have a lifelong appointment to our Supreme Court, who will have Secretary of Education, Housing, Health, our Attorney General. We're voting for the rule of law, national parks, clean air and water, housing rights, taxation, immigration protocols, retirement, our reception by other nations, and more. I can go on, but enough of me talking. Time to bring on our guests. First, I would like to introduce Nicole Pryor Donorscession, President and CEO of Firestarter Entertainment. It has been incredibly thoughtful and has a lot of creative ideas about that can help the BIPOC community harness their power while simultaneously serving as a platform for helping white people be effective allies in life. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you for having me. And you said my name right. Good job.
Yes. Next up is my friend Christina Wong, performance artist, comedian, writer, and elected representative who has presented internationally across North America, the UK, Hong Kong, and Africa. What's up, Christina?
Hi, so good to see you.
So good to see you.
I'm in my home theater campaign office.
I love it. You done it up. Okay.
Yeah,
okay, girl.
I'm getting election ready.
There you go.
Home style.
Nice. Next up is Pennsylvania District 181 Representative Malcolm Kenyatta, the first openly LGBT person of color and one of the youngest members elected to the Pennsylvania General Assembly. He was chosen by Vice President Joe Biden to give a keynote address at this year's Democratic National Convention. Welcome, Representative Kenyatta. Can we call you Malcolm?
You can, of course, please. And so I'm so sorry. We went from Christina's wonderful home studio to my car because literally Senator Harris has been in Philly today, and I just was a part of a crew that sent her off on her plane, and so I'm in my car, but I couldn't miss this for the world.
Oh, I appreciate that, and big up to Senator Harris, no doubt.
That's right. That's right.
So welcome, everyone. So glad you're joining us this evening. As you know, this panel is focusing on voting, particularly in BIPOC communities. So let's start with a big question. The USA is over 244 years old, and yet we have not systemically addressed racism, economic disparities, education, and other social inequities. So the question is, why should we vote? What's in it for us?
Everything. Oh my God. I can't live like this anymore. Please, God, vote.
Yes, seriously.
That's all. Oh, I mean, it's everything from why tax rates are the way they are, or where tax money goes. It's everything from do I need to look at a rapist? Take in certain positions of power. It's all that. It's a women's right to choose. It's gay marriage, like all of this has been on ballots, has happened because we can vote. It's everything. Voting is so much, and it's like the one way we get a say.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you talked about systematically addressing racism. The reason why we're in this situation is because of the system that is in place. And in order to change systems, you have to vote. And that is the one, like Christina said, that is the one way that we do have power. And not only on a, I think sometimes it feels so big when it comes to like the president, but what about our local elections? That's where we can really make a difference in our communities. And I find, that tends to be the more challenging elections and the ones that people skip. And those are the ones that actually really affect us. day to day. And the two people on this call are an example of the people that are making a difference in their communities. I'm the only non-elected official, but as a person that lives in these districts, I would love for you guys to show up so that we can make a difference. I'm in Nevada right now, at my home in Nevada, and we just had a local election for judges. I have to admit, it was my first time in a local election for judges. It was hard. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I couldn't find information. I had to do a lot of research, but I realized it matters, because if something ever happened to me, my family, if they were arrested, I mean, we could go into the systematic situation with minorities being overpopulated in the prison system, but the judges are the ones who are putting them there, So we need to be really careful and mindful about these elections and who we're putting into office.
Yeah,
I think that's 100% true. And if I could, I want to answer this two ways. First, I want to address the fact that being apathetic about a system that has so often not lived up to so many of the things that we say about ourselves as a country. I'm not far right now from Old City, here in Philadelphia, where a lot of those documents were written, and we've never lived up to that. And so, I want to empathize to say, it makes sense that if you have a system that is consistently not providing value to you, it is a natural response to say, I don't want to be engaged with that. But here's the medicine after the empathy. I hear people say, well, I don't do politics. And I always respond this way. Well, politics does you. And so whether you engage or don't engage, decisions are going to be made about your life, about the life of your family, about people you care about, and about the communities that you live in. And so the question becomes, are we going to allow the folks who use apathy as a tool to keep you from recognizing your power? Are we going to allow them to win? Because I promise you, they're showing up to vote. I promise you.
I just love what you just said about the fact that I don't do politics, but politics does you.
Yeah.
I think that's a very strong message, And this is the question I've been struggling with and trying to figure out. I mentioned indigenous peoples when I introduced this panel, and they've been dismissed by society at large, right? Just given the right to vote, not even 100 years ago. The same could be said for our trans and non-binary siblings, brothers and sisters. How do we capture, or how do we get those communities to vote when neither side, really, Democrat or Republican, fully addresses the issues that facing those communities? And it's, I'd love to hear from one of you.
Some of the exciting stuff I feel like I'm seeing as an artist and elected rep, but there are initiatives to try to have artists or people from that demographic engage folks. So I have I'm on a couple of projects now to engage Asian American voters who, BTW, the stereotype is we are like straight A students, but we flunked voting. In 2018, our voter turnout was 40 point. I got the numbers memorized because it's in my show. Right. Christina Wong for public office, which is playing live from my house. But I'll read you some stats. But basically, we need folks who look like these demographics to tell other folks, listen, I know that politicians are not courting you because they don't care. But you have to vote at least for some other option that you care about. So 40.2% of Asian Americans showed up to vote.
Wow.
How embarrassing, right? I'm so ashamed of you, Asian Americans. Ashamed of you if you're watching. Latinx folks, 40.4%. Black folks, 51.4%. But guess who beat you? White folks at 57.5%. But this is shitty. These are terrible numbers. Like, you wouldn't want to go to a restaurant with this kind of health score. So why would you want to live in a country with this kind of participation?
Yeah, you know what? And I think we often talk about voting as a right, but I guess my job here today is just to continue to deliver some tough medicine. Voting is also a responsibility. To be in a democracy is not to be a viewer of a reality TV show. It is to be a steward of a tradition that so many folks who came before us fought to include more people. And it is not perfect. And as one of only 2 LGBTQ folks to ever be elected to state government in Pennsylvania, as the only person of color, I will hit you with a quote that I don't think Cory Booker was the first to say, but that really resonated for me when he was running for office. He said, if America hasn't broken your heart, you don't love her enough. And so to have a country that so often breaks your heart, I get it, but we have a chicken or an egg situation where our issues aren't addressed, and so we say, like, forget being involved, but it's that lack of involvement with those numbers that you just rattled off that allow the systemic disenfranchisement of our communities to continue.
So are we asking too much or not enough?
Not enough.
Not enough. Not enough.
I mean, people need to show up. If you have a problem when you're a child, if you break you scream out for your parents to help and fix it and to take you to a doctor. We are so many issues in America right now, and if you don't show up to do the things that you can do to help yourself, which is voting, then I don't want to tell people to shut up and I don't want to tell people their problems don't matter because they're not voting, but I also want to say stop screaming and not voting.
Yeah.
Just
yes.
like do at least the littlest thing that you can do to actually help make a difference. We all are angry. We're all frustrated with the state of things right now, but please at least get out and vote. That's a small thing. And I know it's challenging right now with all the other things, and I know we'll address ways that we can vote, but if you are able, that's the thing that you should do. Don't just forget about it. Don't just be like, none of this affects me. My vote doesn't matter. I'm too small. Your vote matters.
I feel like if you really look at the history of just how suppressed the vote was first they talk about 100 years of women's suffrage. What was white women's suffrage? Then the black suffrage movement had to do the heavy lifting and make sure that was extended to Black women and all women of color. And it's something I've benefited from. And it's like, if you think about that, and then you're just gonna be like, watching Tiger King. Like, come on, like that's not okay. Like, don't be ungrateful. But it's like that's the most revolutionary FU you can do, because folks are working so hard, especially if you are a Black Indigenous person of color, for you to not vote. They want you so desperately to not vote so they can maintain their power, right? And maintain their hold over you, and know that you don't care enough to question leadership or demand anything else. So this is that moment to step up and get in that booth and fill in those bubbles and do the most revolutionary thing you can possibly do, which was not a right that we always had.
And I think just what you just I'm sorry, just what Christina Wong, what you just said is so important. I mean, I'm promising you, for folks who are watching this, folks are spending millions and millions of dollars to keep you from voting. They're not doing that because they like to waste money. They're doing it because they're afraid that you might actually vote.
Yeah.
They're
so can we
afraid
talk about
you might vote, and so they're throwing up.
It looks like you may have frozen, Malcolm.
So right, and that
Yeah.
fear goes back to the system that's in place.
I said they're throwing up every barrier. I'm done.
Well, I was gonna add to what you said, in that the system that's in
I'm done talking.
Yeah.
the system that's in place is monetizing those people, making them richer. We have to remember that the system of racism was started with, right? The slavery, the reason why they chose Black people to be enslaved is because, number one, we look different. It was easy to capture us and see us. Number two, we had a high ability to resist European diseases. And number two, we were very, very physically strong. So we were able to make money for our slave owners. Then slavery ends and we go right into Jim Crow, where again, a lot of it was for monetary reasons. So like both Christina and Malcolm were saying, it's still money. You know, it's not just that people want to keep us down. They want to keep us down to keep making money on our backs. Right. And we really have to resist that. And the, you know, like we keep saying, the one thing we could do is get out and vote because they don't want us to.
Nicole, you brought up a good point. And this is a reminder to everyone watching, you can ask questions and we will answer them. So Humaira G on Facebook asked, why is there such a low turnout from the BIPOC community? And how can it be remedied? Now, I really want to ask the elected representatives, how do we fix this? How do we fix this? Yeah.
Well, I know for a lot of Asian American communities, it's a language barrier issue. There are ballots, at least in California, that I know of, that are available in so many different Asian languages. So this is where we call upon like the grandkids or the English, you know, sort of the English speaking folks in the family to help usher those materials to your parents, to your grandparents, and tell them, you know, clarify a lot of misunderstandings. It doesn't jeopardize your citizenship to vote. Right. Like you don't go on some record where people come after you, because that at least with my grandparents, they're the generation that like ran away from communism. They can't trust the government, right? So it's just like clearing up a lot of misconceptions about voting and maybe offering to help fill out a form or drop off the ballot. We don't have in-person voting here, so I don't believe so. And so just trying to find ways to help the other generation do that. Now that's a lot of lifting on our part because it's a lot of education. And I say us is like the generation that can help usher that in. But that's definitely something. But it's also that they don't feel spoken to by politicians, and they just sort of feel like, oh, this is someone else's game. This is someone else's thing that doesn't concern us. So it's a lot about younger people who already help like translate for doctors or do things like that for their parents or grandparents to help make that connection. So
it's up to us, younger generation.
Yeah.
I don't know if I call myself younger, but the not the elders of the communities.
Well, the ones that can speak English and can usher.
Yeah.
Can usher.
Yeah. And it's up to us to keep having conversations like this to make sure people know that no vote is too small, that not one person cannot make a difference. You know, local elections are the results are like teeny margins. Like, you know, a couple of, 10 votes can make a difference. So it really, really matters. And one person can make a difference. I mean, the one thing I hear the most is that they don't think that their vote matters. You know, when you hear millions and millions of people voting, it doesn't feel like your one vote matters. And it really does. And I think if we could keep having conversations like this, I mean, all of us have our followers, all of us have people that listen to us, all of us have friends. And I think speaking about it is so important, talking about it consistently. I never been involved in politics ever. Like it's never really been a huge concern to me. I'm not like the two other panelists where they have engaged in that way. I'm in the entertainment business like Christina. Like I'm like, anybody want to be an actor? Like that's my job. But
so let me,
but I've learned that it's important in the last couple of years. I'm like, this is I didn't think that one person could really affect my life. Like I didn't think that the president had enough power to really make that big of a difference. And I couldn't have been more wrong. And this is why it matters so much. It's imperative to our livelihoods at this point, like our actual life.
Yeah. Christina, what were you about to say?
I wanted, don't be intimidated by me because I'm a politician, let me tell you. I am listen, I have a dirty trail on the internet. I've got videos out there that no one should see. Well, maybe that makes me more like a politician than anyone else. But the point is, like, I'm on neighborhood council, which technically is the lowest rung of government in Los Angeles. But
we won't say
I wear that. I wear that badge, right? And I won by 72 votes. I literally had to like wave people down in the street, like with a big smile, and usher them to vote for me. And while we're largely just an advisory board for the neighborhood, we've made some pretty significant decisions that do long-term affect stuff. Like we make recommendations on big developments. This neighborhood is rapidly gentrifying and developing, and we pushed back against a lot of developers and have not given them the recommendation that they need to move forward to develop and build. Some of them will be able to still build, but it's a big difference. It is one moment of mobilization so that you don't stop it after you see it and go, why are there so many buildings? Why is it so expensive to rent here? It's like these little things. But we also voted to abolish ICE. Now, as it turns out, neighborhood council cannot abolish a federal agency, but it was a huge symbolic gesture, right? To say that we are an immigrant neighborhood standing up for all immigrants. And I very much like, for those of you who are artists or like, I don't get involved in politics. I mean, if I can say like politics, they're actors too. Like if anything, artists and politicians have switched jobs because they now create the shock and spectacle that have us questioning reality. And we now reclaim the quiet space for social change and truth. So it's like, you know, it's no one, and in this pandemic, some of us are cutting hair for the first time. Some of us have cooked food. We don't even know how to do that. It's like,
gardening.
You know, like this is the moment to stretch yourself. Think of it as being like The Bachelor on The Bachelor. And instead of hot ladies, you get to pick between Trump or Biden, you know, like, come on. Am I selling this enough? Can you please vote?
I think you're selling it. Yeah.
I think you're doing a good job.
Yeah, Christina.
You've been making so much change on the local level, and you won again by like 70 votes. 70.
72. If you count the vote I cast for myself, 72.
72.
Yes.
That counts.
That's what people need to hear. That's what people need to understand. I mean, that's 72 people. That's not that many people.
And there are plenty of.
I know my internet, because the universe is trying to block me, but I wanted to make this important point. You know, voting is one part of a healthy civic diet, as I like to say. Voting alone, whether it's for the president or for neighborhood council, which is incredibly important, Christina, by the way, as you just outlined, that does not fix all of our problems. We have a responsibility to stay engaged. I think about some of the bills that we were able to pass around policing reform here in Harrisburg. It really was not because these bills weren't written. It was because there was not the social pressure. And when we had folks come out in 61 of our 67 counties saying we want change, we passed legislation that I just months before thought was impossible. And so it wasn't enough for people to show up and press my name and have an elected official who shares your values, but it's also staying engaged in the issues and allowing those folks who you do support, who you do donate $1 or $5 to, allowing them to actually do the work that they need to do. And so don't vote and go away, because there are no superheroes who are elected to public office. And I said to people, when I got elected, the sky's not going to open up because I'm elected. And all the issues that existed are now, you know, moot because I got elected. I'm one part of a coalition, and you have to believe in your role. And it's an ongoing role that doesn't end on election day.
There's no.
Go ahead, Christina.
Politicians aren't like, it's not like the Make-A-Wish Foundation where you, unfortunately. And I have this where like people just start screaming, "There's trash in the street," and I'm like, "Oh my God, no wonder so many politicians become wooden," and like, but actually, you know, it's like it's so confusing. I recommend that folks run for office at the smallest level because it actually helps you understand why your neighborhood looks the way it does. It's like this amazing lesson in civics. But yeah, it's like after you elect the people in office, you do have to work with them and identify things, and not just sit in the back seat and go, you know, good, we're gone, apocalypse is over, right? We actually, I think this moment for me especially has taught me how important it is sorry about that, for communities to continually work alongside politicians and put pressure on them, and also make aware what their needs are.
You both mentioned issues facing us in civics. So let's talk about white people.
Yeah.
Kathy and David have a question.
Yes.
Transition.
I'm pretty good at my transitions.
Segway king.
That's my new name. There's a Tiger King, there's Burger King, and I'm the Segway King.
All right, white people. Yeah.
Yeah. What can white folks do to become good allies without sucking up all the air in the room? And this is from Kathy.
Can I just start by saying this? Like, white guilt is not really helpful. What white people can do is use their privilege to help push some of the systemic change. And so I bring that up to say, a large part of my career before I ran for office was doing diversity and inclusion. And I would do these sessions talking about diversity, talking about equity. And some people's takeaway is, I feel very bad. But you feeling bad is not enough. But you recognizing that you have privilege in a lot of the spaces that you're in, and then utilizing that privilege is pivotal to how we're going to create change. Because folks have been marching for police justice for a long time. But when I mentioned the 61 of 67 counties, when folks started coming out in Cambria County, when folks started coming out in Greene County, and for people who don't know Pennsylvania, these are places where you would not expect anybody to be talking about police violence. But when that happened, it required even Republican Tea Party members to vote for police reform, things that just months before, some of them have said, I will never, ever do. But when they started seeing their neighbors, folks from farming communities say, you know what, I'm not farming today. I'm going out in the middle of my road and protest. So use that privilege. It's not enough for you to be sad and feel guilty. Your guilt is not helpful. Your action is helpful.
Yeah.
Exactly. I also think talk to other white people, because when I say the same thing you would tell them, I sound like a conspiracy theorist to them. But somehow when you say the same thing, they're like, what? So use that. Like, you have some magic gift to convince moderate white people with your white face what to do. Like, what to do.
I'm gonna use that. Moderate white people with your white face.
There's a quote by Benjamin Franklin that I love. He says, justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are. And that's what needs to happen. I wrote this long post on social media one day because I realized I grew up in Ventura County. I was one of 12 Black kids in my whole entire school, and it was really hard. And part of the reason why it was hard is because I was, the only one, one of the only ones. And so, and I needed my friends to see me, to just see me. Period. There are times that I always say that inclusion is like being asked to the dance, but not being asked to dance. And I felt like that for most of my childhood. And so I said in this long post, I said, can you white people use your white skin? You guys are like our Obi-Wan Kenobi. You have this amazing superpower called white skin because you are the majority of the race. That's it. Like the majority of our country are white. So use this superpower for good. You can use this power to help infiltrate the dark force that is white supremacy, because it's really hard for Malcolm, Christina, for all of us on this to listen to us sometimes. The white supremacists, we're going to be yelling at them, trying to tell them, do something, but they're not going to hear us, because if they already don't like us or don't see us, how can they receive what we're trying to tell them? But if somebody who looks like them comes to them, someone they love, a family member. I mean, I think we have all seen all of the conversations that are having amongst families that I probably wouldn't have been able to do. But now my allies, my white ally friends are having these difficult conversations with family members who believe differently than they do. And many times are making an influence and making a difference. And sometimes they might not make a difference, but just that communication alone is being a white ally. That's what you can do is just speak up. If you see something, say something, right? Like, but you don't, I will say one of the things, like the person asked, like without sucking out the air, I will say as a Black person, sometimes you have to give us a break. I find that sometimes the talk about race and racism and all of that and just everything, you know, it's just really hard. And sometimes it feels like you're almost being re-traumatized over and over and over again by having to talk about your experiences. And not all of us are strong enough to do it. Some of us have the capacity, and I think the people on this call do, but not all of us do. So I think listen to the people that are talking to you and be respectful if they are not able to help you understand, because they might not be able to do it right now because it hurts.
Yeah. I think you said something. Oh, go ahead, Christina. No.
Oh, I was just saying, as a non-Black ally to Black Lives Matter and to my Black friends, as I've also had to like sit back. Just because I'm a person of color doesn't mean like I'm safe from criticism or that I can do damaging things. And so a lot of it, I would say, is just listen and just accept that the truth that someone is sharing about their experience is the truth. Don't challenge it. Like, and I've had people challenge me about my experience. Oh, that didn't really happen to you. Oh, you're overreacting, you know, and it's really hurtful and doesn't help, doesn't build trust. And it is re-traumatizing. So I think sometimes you just have to listen, accept what you're hearing, and realize you're the one how can you help behind the scenes? Like, how can you literally be the person who bring meals, bring things that are needed? Like that's where you are best situated. Someone listening and helping where it is needed.
Yeah.
Christina, you nailed it. Listen, believe, and then act.
Yeah.
Like those are the three things, right? Listen, but believe. It's amazing to me how hard the second one is for people. Why believe?
That's right.
So hard. Like that whole argument, like with Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, that to me is the epitome of not believing, not understanding, not wanting to hear another person's perspective. It shocks me.
Yeah. Christina, you said you won by 72 votes, right? 72 votes.
No, total.
I mean, total. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. David in the audience has a question. He's volunteering to work at the polls and having conversations with as many folks as possible. David. Yes. Are there other things you suggest? Nicole said using your white skin as the Obi-Wan to Darth Vader. What else can we be doing? What else can white folks be doing?
You have money? Like support Black candidates, support initiatives that would get out the vote in communities of color, that would stop voter suppression. Those are all amazing places to direct resources that you might have access to. Like, liberate the resources that you have access to. Maybe it's not money. Maybe you work for a marketing firm, or maybe you have an amazing Twitter handle. I can't even believe that that's 2020. Do you have an amazing Twitter handle? Save the world.
Well, you can save us. An amazing Twitter handle.
Oh my gosh.
Like, liberate your resources and to support organizations for folks of color and candidates of color that are progressive, I would hope. You don't have to give your money to Ben Carson at the moment, stuff, other ideas.
Yeah, other ideas.
This is a shakedown. No, okay. What are the ideas?
Yeah. Malcolm, the idea of listen, believe, and act, I think is a great one. Any other ideas?
I think everything that was said, was perfectly said. And I think anything I would say would just be to emphasize it. People underestimate the power that they have to influence other people. You have a lot of people in your network and your circle who really do look to you for guidance, who look to you for your opinion, and who you can truly move. And so I'll never forget, after Trump won, I had a lot of folks reaching out asking this question. I'm so distraught, what can I do? And I said, go to Thanksgiving and have some tough conversations at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
That's a powerful thing that you can do. You really should not underestimate, the way you can engage in this, and this was said, but please don't underestimate it. And everything that was said, I think we're so used to hearing that sometimes it becomes background noise and we stop believing it. But what both my fellow panelists just said is exactly spot on.
Yeah. And I got to do it because you mentioned it, Christina, Ben Carson. What do we say to, the Kanye, the Isaiah Washingtons, the Candace Owens, Herschel Walkers, who are saying we're tools of the Democrats? What do you have to say to those people?
I leave it to you all to take the lead.
So what do you mean? What do you mean exactly by that we are tools of the Democrats? Like, what do they mean?
I don't know. That's what they're saying.
I didn't say it.
I'm quoting the Kanyes and the Carsons.
Like that, basically, that we don't, because that we're tools and that we shouldn't vote for Biden and Harris and that. Exactly. Okay. Well, this is my opinion. And I don't, my whole thing.
We might firefighters, everybody. It is firefighters.
I'm going to say the only time you got people of color on screen, and of course,
it's a fire truck. They're doing their thing.
Great.
So my whole thing is, we fought so long and hard to vote. I would never want to suppress somebody's right to vote for who they want to vote for, right? Like, we are clearly here to speak up for Biden and Harris, right? That's who we are here for. Saying all that, my whole thing is not that I'm against the Republican Party or people in the Republican Party. I'm against Trump. Trump as a human being. Like, to me, Trump has surpassed politics and has just become an incompetent person for the job. He is not the right person for the job, period. And I feel like if you're a Republican and you're like, I can't vote for Biden or Harris, my thing is, there's other Republican options. Write someone else's name in that. Like, I just cannot get behind anyone who votes for Trump specifically. But obviously we are here for Biden and Harris. That's who we're voting for. That's who we're pushing. And that's who we believe in. But I would not want to ever say that people don't have the right to vote for who they want to vote for, because that's the point of this thing. We're here, our voice, our vote. We are here to put forth the things that we believe in. I mean, I grew up as a Christian, and I know my my parents, we were Republicans growing up because they were very, very, very pro-life, and as I grew and went to college and all this stuff happened, I became pro-choice, right? My personal opinions changed. But I totally understand the perspective of the people, because I grew up in that. I understand that people are like, I can't, because that one hot topic issue, they can't become a Democrat because of pro-life, pro-choice, right? So I don't want to ever let that person not have a voice for what they truly believe in their heart,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know we've been like best friends club on this panel so far, but can I push back in this way?
Yes, no, push back.
I don't think this is just about Trump. Trump is a symptom of larger structures that have existed for a long time. And to your point, I do believe that there are folks who are conservative, who have different values, and those values are fair. But I also believe that in this moment, over the last 4 years, the Trump administration really has not been about, small c conservatism. It has been about complete loyalty to a man that is deeply, deeply corrupt and immoral. And so to say, I can't vote for someone who, supports abortion when Trump has actively paid for multiple abortions, has from his own mouth grabbed women by the genitals, and was just this morning accused yet again of sexually assaulting someone. I
Right.
kind of question whether or not folks actually hold those values. And I think at this point, it's not just that Trump is insane, it's that the Republican Party has allowed him to engage in the way that he has. And you have folks like Susan Collins, who's deeply disturbed, who's troubled, who's, warm, whatever she's feeling, but has never stood up to him. So at this point, I believe what Lindsey Graham said in 2015. He said that if Donald Trump is the nominee, he'll destroy the Republican Party and we'll deserve it. And I think that Lindsey Graham of 2015 is 100% correct.
So I have a question then. So what do those Republican voters do? Because I'm just trying to give them an option not to vote for Trump. Like, I'm like, what do we tell them? It's been a
I think they should do what John Kasich is doing and voting for Joe Biden.
Right.
But what if they're like, I can't, or I don't, but they also don't want to vote for Trump. What are they supposed to do? I'm just wondering, and then how can we convince them to vote for Biden? Like, what is I'm actually asking, what is our argument? Because I've had these conversations and I don't know what to say.
I just don't know why this is so difficult to make these decisions, folks.
I know. To me,
maybe
so
this is kind of a lost cause. Maybe that's what this is. Maybe you're a lost cause. But honestly, like the Bible is supposed to be a work of fiction, right? And yet I'm like, oh, I guess it's real. I'm saying this as someone who's not a Christian, but I'm like, oh my God, pestilence and fire and civil war, like just breaking out in the street. But like, I mean, this is just so crazy. Like, just look at the facts. Just look at what do you want?
We lose them when we tell them they're crazy. So how?
I don't. I'm a Christian. That's my religious tradition. Donald Trump does not believe in any of those values. And so I think that that's the reality of the situation. I do believe that there are folks who have strongly held religious values. I have strongly held religious values. Donald Trump has never opened a Bible. Donald Trump is not a Christian. Joe Biden is a lifelong Catholic. So if you care about Christianity and if faith is important to you, there's only one candidate that's actually a person of faith.
That's true. That's a good argument. I will write that one down as an argument. It's so hard. Like, that is because I go to Christina, like I go to that you are freaking crazy town to be voting for this person. Like,
I know.
I literally lose my mind. Like I just can't understand how you could. This person to me has really put the America that we all know and love in danger. Like he's a danger to our republic, and I don't understand how they can't see it. Like, I feel it almost feels cultish. Is it just me? But it feels it's this weird cultish.
I think it's definitely cultish, and it's wrapped around patriotism, which all three of you have talked about. And I know, you two are elected officials. I consider all four of us patriots of this country. So I have a question. Trump has already outlawed or is seeking to prohibit federal funding for anti-racist training, which is what I do for a living. He's also promoting a new project, the 1776 curriculum, and that's in response to the 1619 project. What do we tell young people? How do we activate young people? They are the future. What's our message to youth?
I think culture is so much power, right? And if there's a lot of studies that if young people were the ones who were voting for the president, we wouldn't have Trump reelected, right? And I think it's important to understand how powerful culture is, and that culture actually has a lot of influence over votes, and culture is how we share our values as human beings. And and the stories that shape us, right? And that's what I do as a performer, is I share these stories. So I think it's like empowering young people, not just screaming at them to vote, even though I have been shaming a lot of young people to vote, but but to tell them, like, listen, you're the folks you're the folks in a few years I'm going to go to help me figure out my computer. You're the folks who are going to help me figure out like all these things, but you also have so much power and influence with each other, even though you feel like you're just stuck with homework and stuff right now. You have the power to shift and change things. So take that power, empower you to do. It's like the messages you put out there have an amazing influences. But it's also like, listen, if my dumb ass can get voted in except with 72 votes with like no experience, like, and if Trump with no experience can become president, listen, like, it's, and the folks who I see who get elected to local office, it's just like, y'all can do this. Like, it's just a lot of energy to run a campaign, but you also think about running.
So do you suggest that if people are interested, we should run for office?
Totally.
I mean, I know we went to school for that, you and I, Christina.
We went to artist campaign school, which trains artists how to run and win for local office. And it was like, oh, this is just like being an artist. Fundraisers, speeches, monologues, energy, image work, like it's all the same stuff. Yeah. But for real, like once you enter politics, there's some real life outcomes from that. There is an art too. Art actually also has a ton of power to shift culture, but like legislative outcomes that are enforced on a daily basis that you're not just pushing up against as an artist.
Right.
Yeah.
And Malcolm, you were the youngest member, person of color elected to Pennsylvania General Assembly. What do you tell the young people in your young people in your network?
So let me say this. I don't think that everybody should run for office. I don't think everybody wants to run for office.
Take it back.
No. I do think that more people who want to run for office should. One of the things we know statistically is that women are less likely to run, even if they want to run, because there are all these different things that we do in our minds that tell us we're not qualified for the position. But what I am saying is that when we send a message that everybody has to run for office, I think we're also counterintuitively sending a message that being an elected official is the only way you can have impact. And I don't think that that's true. I deeply, deeply dispute the idea that like elected officials are up here and everybody else is down here in service to them, or that's the only way change can happen. Some of the people who we deify, rightfully so, in our society never held elected office, never were elected to a thing, but they changed the course of history in this country. And so what I would say is what Brother James Baldwin says. He said, go the way your blood boils. Do that thing that makes you passionate. Do that thing that makes you get up every day and want to work like hell. Because if everybody's running for office and there's nobody running the nonprofits, we're in trouble. If there's nobody, being the block captain, we're in trouble. If there's nobody getting involved in their faith community or in their civic, community organization, then we really are going to be in trouble. And so I do think that we need more diverse people running for office. I do think that Black folks and brown folks and poor folks should not disqualify ourselves from office, because before I ran, I'll never forget, I was with my fiance when he was still living in California, and I had a whole list of reasons why I thought I was disqualified from running. And all the things that I thought disqualified me actually qualified me. The fact that I grew up in a working poor family and I was queer and I was young, all those things made me a phenomenal candidate. However, I would not have gotten into office if it wasn't for all the people who never wanted to run for office, who supported my campaign, who donated, who came up with social media graphics, all these different things. And so running for office is a moral, I still think it is a morally good thing to do, even though we can think of a bunch of political leaders who have not met that bar. But I do not believe it's the only way you can make an impact. It's why I say voting, as important as it is one part of our healthy civic diet.
Thank you. Thank you. we're coming up towards the end of our conversation, but there's a question from the audience that I think is good, and I think is necessary to ask. Is Josh K. Cole feels like people vote for Trump to spite Democrats. Full stop. How do we send an olive branch to those people? We've talked about it, right? You've both talked about working across the aisle. Nicole's obviously fed up with Trump, right? I think, right? What do we do? Is there a way? That's my question. Really, is there a way to do that?
You're more patient than I am, Nicole, I feel like, so you should be. My aisle that I work across is this. It's like
well, I like Malcolm's answer earlier.
I don't work with Trumpers.
Right. I think Malcolm's answer was perfect in just comparing the two, comparing morals to each other, comparing them side by side. It's so clear who the decision should be, But if the person is just going to spite the Democrats and vote for Trump, like aren't they kind of already lost? Like that's a really hard thing to convince somebody after they're like, I'm doing this to spite you. How do you fix their heart? It sounds like their heart is damaged.
Yeah. I mean, I find myself, there are a few people like that, very few in my life. And I just go, let me find lower hanging fruit. And I don't antagonize. I have no energy to antagonize them further. Like, it's just, all right. Like, let me work on taking care of folks in my community.
Yeah.
If someone gets that far to want to spite somebody, do something just to spite somebody, they're very angry. Their heart is damaged. They've been hurt. So you have if you want to try to engage with that person, maybe work with their heart. Talk to them on a heart level. Try to find maybe commonalities between the two of you, and then go from there. I remember a long time. I mean, Christina mentioned earlier how people always say that didn't happen to you when it comes to racial injustices, because they don't. A lot of times when the people say that, they're really talking to themselves. They're saying, I'm not a racist. It's not possible that anything horrible like that could happen to you, because I would never do that to you. And when people say that to me now, I always instead say to them, you have never treated me poorly. You have never treated me differently. You are wonderful, but unfortunately there are other people who have, and these situations are real because they've happened to me. And so maybe approaching people at a heart level and trying to find commonalities, making sure that people don't feel like you're attacking them in any way, that you love them first and then go from there. But I don't know.
As we're closing up, any final words for the audience? We're in the middle of a revolution. We all know it. How would you? What would your parting words be for the last 2 minutes of this program?
I think in this moment, oh yes, vote. But I think I see in this. Sorry, I didn't. Was there more, Nicole?
No.
Okay. One vote, but beyond this, I think this is definitely, like I said, a moment where we're seeing that we do different things. Like we're suddenly teachers of our children. We are cooks. We're hair cutters, but we also have this power to rise up and become leaders. So while it might not be running for office, I think our republic is in trouble, and so it needs to go beyond just us going to the booth and checking out. This revolution doesn't happen. I guess it could happen on the couch if you're really good at Twitter, but you also have to take action to it. You have to take action and keep going.
Yeah.
I was watching a live interview with President Obama, and I'll leave with what he said, which was really, really inspiring to me. He said right now, especially with COVID and people being home, people are paying attention. And I'm going to paraphrase, but he said people are paying attention right now. And because people are paying attention, right now is the time for us to educate, to mobilize, and to act. And I think even what we do, I haven't done Zoom interviews and figuring out all this stuff, right? I've done over 30 interviews during this COVID time. And I think, and Christina's run for office, and we're doing a lot of things that maybe we never thought we could do or should do or wanted to do. But right now, people are paying attention, and this is our chance to be heard. So, get out there and not just vote, but let your voice be heard. Speak to your friends, speak to your family, mobilize, act, educate.
Thank you. Well, your voice was heard. I appreciate all of you. I think we lost Representative Kenyatta due to cell phone coverage, but thank you for joining us on this wonderful panel talking about voting. There's going to be a slide. I'm going to tell you how to vote, where to vote. Don't forget Disco Saturday happening this Saturday. Just a huge shout out to Christina, Nicole, and Malcolm. Thank you. This is Only You Can Save Us. We out.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to meet you, Nicole. Where are you located?
I'm based out of LA, but I live in Nevada, so I fly back and forth.
Oh, wow.
They live in LA.
Well, one day. What neighborhood in LA are you in when you're here?
My office is in Woodland Hills.
Okay.
I'm in Starr County.
Oh,
where
amazing.
Are you?
Koreatown. That's where I'm.
Okay, we're close enough. Everything's good now.
I had an ex in Oh, it says let's sign off again. I have to go. Oh, I have to go to another tech rehearsal. I'm sorry, guys. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate that.
Bye.
Have a good one. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.